From Immersive Labs, this is Cyber Humanity. Hello everyone, I'm Chris Pace, and as usual, I'm joined by ex-GovType and Immersive Labs product guy Paul Bentham.
Hello everybody.
And pro teamer Kevin.
You did it again.
Every time.
We have practiced the intro 3 times, and I've called him Kevin every single time.
Only his mum calls him Kevin.
And I've still not been able to say hello.
Oh, hello, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Hello, thank you.
Well, in these short podcasts, we will aim to focus on the human side of cybersecurity with a bit of tech thrown in, social engineering, hacker motivations, cyber crisis scenarios, all that kind of thing. And this week we're going to talk about Sodinokibi.
Sodinokibi.
Can we just... I really can't say this. Sodinokibi. Or
Revel.
Can we just call it the bikini one?
See, now you say Revel and I read it and I'm like, is it Reveal?
Reveal.
It can't be reveal. That would be the word reveal, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Sodinokibi.
Reveal.
Revel's probably easier.
I mean, before we even get into Travelex and all that, we can spend 2 minutes talking about who gets to name these things and how do they name them and what are they thinking?
Isn't it Kevin Beaumont?
Just always Kevin Beaumont.
Basically,
Kevin Beaumont read about it somewhere. And
I think I need to follow more people on Twitter.
What, other than
Kevin
Beaumont?
It's typically whoever finds it first gets to name it, and it's usually done by something unique within the malware, so typically a string or something like that.
But we don't know in this case what it is.
We probably do.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hello. Hello, he thinks he knows.
He's going to Google it.
It's not.
Can hear his keyboard? Can hear his keyboard going?
Google my way to victory.
But either way, it's a ridiculous name. And if the first person that found it is the person who named it, that person's an idiot.
Aren't we just going to call it the Travelex malware?
Yeah, we're going to just talk about Travelex ransomware.
It's a bit unfair. That's a bit unfair, though, isn't it?
Well, it is unfair because I know during the research that it's been around for a little while, and it's not only obviously impacted Travelex, but none of us had really heard of it until it hit the news. Like everything in cybersecurity. I don't know, Kev, you've probably been heard about it since 2017.
Maybe he wrote it.
Not quite.
Oh.
Let's not go there.
Controversial.
Ooh.
When I worked at Sophos, you used to ask that all the time. Do you write the viruses? Thinking, we're on to you.
I've got into a couple of fights with malware authors before.
Well, like,
hello.
actual fights?
We should do a whole episode on this.
Define fight.
Come on, Kev.
I used to reverse engineer malware a lot, and I used to publish the decryptors to pull out the C2 stuff. And a lot of these guys...
Command and control. Translating on the fly, ladies and gentlemen.
A lot of the malware authors will use some kind of crypto, so it's harder for the analyst or the static stuff to pull it out. And I was looking at a piece of malware, reverse engineered it, published the scripts, and away we went. And about a week later, he published a new version with a new set of crypto keys. So I did it again, reverse engineer it, publish the script.
Tit for tat.
It then did it again. Except this time, his crypto key is Kev the Hermit is a gay.
Oh, that's not acceptable.
No.
That's not acceptable in so many ways.
No, it's just not even... I mean, it's not even funny.
No.
So
I've got a lot better things I'd call you.
So then, obviously... published the script again, updated it, released a new version, and then, right on schedule, a week later, another one comes out.
Do I need the bleep machine?
We're going to need the bleep. So, Kev the Hermit is a gay, what fucks with his mother?
Oh, wow. So we do need the bleep machine.
I don't think it's an overestimation to say that escalated.
Yeah.
It's almost like he didn't expect. What did he not expect you to? He thought, oh well, the guy's done it twice. I'm not going to bother with the next. And then he was like, oh, he has that guy. I hate that guy.
You know what this reminds me of? And I think this is consistent here, Kev. These are like some of the answers we get to our labs. And I think the common denominator here is you.
No, I think the common denominator is the F word. Actually,
there are some stats. I'm not.
Anyway, get on with your story.
That was the story.
That was the story.
Oh, is it? That was the end.
Yeah.
Was the end.
To be honest, I thought it ended on a high.
I need a budum tish.
I thought it was pretty good.
So we're talking about the Revel, Sodinokibi malware and how it affected the Travelex site.
Yeah, so Travelex, as I guess all of us will know, are a leading foreign exchange firm. We've seen them in every airport. And broadly what happened. Their website went offline on the 31st of December. We didn't hear anything from them until like the 2nd of January. Then they put up a website that said, our website is down for planned maintenance.
Planned maintenance.
And then the Twitter attack confirmed what it was, but they were still saying there was no indication of compromise. And then it turned out that they confirmed then that it was this particular variant of ransomware, who were also talking directly to the media about, the nature of the ransom and saying they'd been active in their network and all this kind of stuff. So what do we actually know about this bit of malware? Why has it been so successful? What does it do?
Well, in terms of what does it do, it's fairly standard in terms of actual ransomware. It does a really good job of getting onto your system. It infects it. It encrypts all your files, deletes any local backups, and then it uses proper crypto. So some of the early days of ransomware, we saw like people rolling their own crypto or using stuff that was easily recoverable. This stuff's not. This stuff is using proper AES, proper public-private key encryption, and it's almost impossible to be able to recover it unless you've got the keys.
Did I hear this as ransomware as a service as well?
That's one of the more bespoke things about this. So the ransomware itself is, like we said, fairly standard, but this is ransomware as a service. So what we have is we have the Sodnikibi group. They go out to their affiliates. They sell it. Their affiliates buy it. And I think the ratio is something like, for every infection, the Sodnikibi group take 30%, and the others take 70%, so they take their cut off the top. But what they're saying is that it's not just like spam emails going out, it's more than that. So the idea is that you infect a corporate network in some way through a exploit or through phishing. You get in there, you steal as much information as you can, something that you can use for leverage. Then once you're ready, once you've exfiltrated everything, then you drop that final bomb. You drop the ransomware.
Well, of course, that would tie directly to the whole idea that that the group themselves, or whoever and I guess because it's ransomware as a service and they're an affiliate, we don't actually know who this group are, where they are, what their motivations are. We don't have much visibility into any of that. But what we do know is that they were interacting with the media and saying, we've been in this network for 6 months, like we've got access to this data. The ransomware part, the encryption bit, was just a mechanism to get them to see that that's what was going on. The other thing I'm kind of interested in is if you're an affiliate and you're buying ransomware as a service, what sort of level of technical understanding and expertise do you need to have?
As the affiliate, fairly low. Like the hard part's being done by the guys who are running the infrastructure, they're creating the malware, keeping it up to date. They're pushing that out. So in terms of the affiliate, all you need is that really strong delivery mechanism. And even then, you don't need a strong delivery mechanism. You just need one that works. Yeah,
I mean, in this case, the way that it seemed to appear for Travelex was pretty dramatic in the first instance. The way the website went down, I mean.
Yeah, so from the external view looking in, all we saw was a fairly janky, standard, generic IAS error page saying this site is no longer available.
What I loved about that, I mean, I don't ever like pain for an IT operations team, but that is a really bad error page. Not even a 404, not even a service undergoing maintenance. It was properly bad. I mean, that ransomware must have totally destroyed everything.
Yeah, and it was up for a couple of days as well. It was a few days before they actually managed to get some other kind of holding page in place.
Do we know how this got in? And there was a bit of speculation at the time about VPNs, and it could be a vulnerable VPN that they hadn't patched. It feels like we know that. It feels like someone proved that.
My mate Kevin
Beaumont again.
Yeah, so we know that they had vulnerable VPN servers, and we know that they were made aware of this a few months earlier.
Oh dear, people! Patch.
You say that like
it's too straight. It's too simplistic, isn't it? That because what about the potential business impact? There's always a rationale for why you don't rush to patch.
These are gateway appliances as well. So like your Windows systems, they're designed to have automatic updates. They're designed to run like WSUS servers and automatic patching policies. You forget that appliances on your gateway, they're much harder to actually do that, and a lot of them may involve like actual downtime.
This Pulse thing is it an appliance then? Is it a Unix based thing, or is it part of Windows?
It's an appliance.
Oh, it is an appliance. So I guess that yeah.
People have to get hands on to patch it.
I don't know exactly the patching process, but it's not as simple as just.
So it's not as simple as clicking that update button when it pops up on my machine.
No, it's the risk that you have to restart that appliance then, and that's where the business.
Oh, what? So the business could be down for a bit.
Because it would be bad if that happened.
Really bad if that happened.
We also have to remember that
for 2 days,
patches aren't always 100% perfect when they come out. Like Microsoft have rolled out patches where they've bricked machines and they've caused blue screens. So there is a real danger. Like any good patching policy should make sure you're patching your appliances in some kind of dev env before you roll it live to production.
What is it about VPNs just recently that they seem to be so like? Is it just a trend? Is it a human thing? Is it that hackers are like, oh, hang on a minute, turns out VPNs are quite useful things to hack, or is it literally just a coincidence that we're seeing loads of them getting compromised?
I think what it is it takes one person to find it somewhere, and then everybody picks up the trend. So you'll see a specific piece of software get targeted, and they'll find a vulnerability, and then everybody will go looking at equivalents.
Right.
The same thing happens. Like one VPN appliance gets found, and everybody goes, I wonder what all those other VPN appliances are doing. So you see a surge in people going to look for them.
Hey, Kev, didn't we just find a vulnerability in a VPN?
We did. It's not quite the same. It's not remote code execution, but we discovered a local privilege escalation vulnerability in a VPN client. So that's the client side.
Ah, so not as bad.
Not as bad, but
as the Pulsar one.
This is mainly for if you're like an insider threat. So if I'm a standard user on a machine, then I can use that to gain my administrator privileges, and then I can start to open up some lateral movement from there. So I can get hold of maybe some admin credentials around the box, and if there's weak password policies, there's lots of internal abuse I can start.
So basically, you have to have access in the first place.
You need to have pre-existing access.
Kinda.
Got it.
Or an insider threat.
Thinking about this vulnerability particularly, is it likely that this is something where the exploit code already exists and has been kind of weaponized, and they're just using it like as part of an exploit kit or something like that, or are they cleverer than that?
Probably not. They're probably just seeing something come out. Like there's like 3 days between a vulnerability and a patch coming out before a reliable POC comes out. So they could just be sitting on that waiting for it. And then as soon as it's out, they can just start weaponizing it, using it. And then once they're on, then they can switch to like manual tactics and hands-on stuff.
Got you. Right, let's have a little bit of a think about the nature of Travelex's response.
Lack of.
Oh, I like this bit.
And then, but the thing I found really, really interesting, of course, and the first thing we all thought about was the timing. 31st of December. You know, it's a pretty...
If they'd been in there 6 months, that's really mean.
Well, they've done it on purpose, haven't they? I mean, that's if that's
karma
true,
is due on those people.
Well, it doesn't always work that way, unfortunately, does it? Though.
No, but picking that date, that time, that's a very deliberate act. You know that you're going to have a lot of people out. You know you're going to have limited resource to be able to pull in a short amount of time.
I mean, it's exploiting another vulnerability in many ways.
The human vulnerability.
Yeah, it's because we, let's base our assumption on the fact that they're running a skeleton staff at that point due to the time of year. We can assume that that's true. So therefore, it's kind of putting them on the back foot straight away, isn't it? And I suppose there's a high likelihood that the lack of response is also potentially due to the lack of available people.
But they're an operational company. They'd have had people on support.
But the right people?
Well, but I mean, what's happening? I mean, how bad is this thing that they've not even put an error page up in 2 days? That's serious. What's going on behind the scenes, Kev? What's going on?
Well, it depends. Like, one of the first things you'd expect is before you make any kind of announcement, you're going to want to try and understand what's happening. Now, with this ransomware, it's not quiet. It doesn't sit there. It's not unassuming. It's very verbal in telling you, I've infected your stuff. So their internal staff, their IT support staff will have known that they're infected with ransomware.
So that presents us with a challenge, because you, as I'm going to use the word, as an expert, are saying that they knew, and we all know that they knew, because ransomware puts a big old window up on the screen in red saying, pay the ransom, and yet their initial response 2 days later, was a holding page that said, "We're down for planned maintenance."
The problem you're going to have, especially in large companies like that, is their social media team may not have any direct connection to their IT response team or their security
Oh,
team.
you think they just couldn't talk to each other?
No. In this example, the website said planned maintenance, right? And the tweet that came later said it's a virus, right? So that says to me that they must have put up the planned maintenance page knowing that it was ransomware. They must have.
Or that's just their default page.
Maybe, yeah. Okay. You're giving them the benefit of the doubt.
I'm going to give them it wasn't the best response, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They needed to get something up quickly.
Yeah, because it was weird the way that they said down for planned maintenance on the website, and then literally 3 hours later on Twitter they were like, actually it's a virus.
But this is still 2 days later. I mean, it's not like
they've had quite a lot of time.
They've
to
had
decide
some
what
time. Like any social media person's going to have it on their phone, aren't they? They could have tweeted anything. It's just I think they just couldn't talk to each other.
I wonder whether they were making a decision about what they could get away with. I mean, this is the other.
You think they've lost data?
Well, I think this is the other difference between the pressures put on a publicly traded, or a company part of a publicly traded group against a private company that can potentially approach this in a different way, more from the angle of brand protection. I think from the moment a financial services organization says we have been the target of a cyber attack, they are petrified of the impact that has on their on their liquidity, on their share price, and on their brand reputation. I think the irony is, in this case, they cared so much that they ended up doing probably more damage than they would have done just by being completely upfront about the whole thing. But let's take a step then beyond. Clearly they're saying planned maintenance, or there is a virus and we are doing something proactive, i.e. taking machines down or whatever. But the reality is, right at this point, they're crippled, aren't they? I mean, they're done.
We don't know exactly how far-reaching inside their networks this was, but the fact that all of their services went down, it wasn't just their website, it was their ability to do their white label stuff. So we know they provide services in airports, we know they provide white label services for major supermarkets, we know they have the prepaid stuff. All of that stuff was also impacted, so this was wide-reaching. And whether they were deliberately took an action to take it down to prevent further spread or further compromise, or whether it was that widely compromised, we won't know until if they publish a wider report.
Yeah, which would seem unlikely at this point. I guess then that the question then is, if they were in a place where they were proactively reconstructing the network or whatever they were doing, at that point then the threat actor group are in touch with the media saying, why are they delaying? We have their data. We've been in their network for 6 months. They just need to pay the ransom. That suggests to me it could be one of two things. It could be either that Travelex were delaying, or it could actually be that they felt that Travelex's response was such that they might be able to restore those backups. And so therefore they were pressing for the ransom. Yeah,
so if you're going to get the ransom out, like if you're, as the attacker, if you want the ransom paid, you want to be quick. You want to try and press them before they can return to normal operations. So the sooner you can put pressure on them, the better that's going to be.
It's time. Am I allowed?
Well, so there was some debate about this before we started recording, because Paul wants to talk about product things because he's a product guy.
I'm the product guy.
I said, yes, Paul, you may talk about product things during the podcast, but keep it to a minimum.
Can I? Is now a time?
Yes, but if you do this now, you've used one.
I'm going to use it.
Okay.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
That's right. If you want to know how it feels for Sodinokibi to start in your machine, you can run a lab on it. That's right. You can run a lab on it. You can also go and play with it and work out how to discover it. What else can we do, Kev?
Can you reverse engineer it?
So we should do that. If we can't do that, we need to do that.
We've got 2 labs. So one of them is just as a user, you can double click the malware, you can observe it and watch its behavior, see how it interacts with the system, see those ransomware messages pop up.
And panic like the Travelex people.
Panic like they will have been panicking. The second lab we have is actually unpacking it. It's a lot more technical. So you unpack the malware, you extract the configuration data, and you identify all of that command and control stuff.
Oh, that's cool. C2.
I've totally done that lab. I'm just going to put this out there. You got to pay the ransom, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Well, we were getting to that, weren't we? So yeah, what about paying the ransom? I mean, well, let's go around the table.
I'd pay it.
You're a payer.
I mean, I'm
you're
a payer,
I know that
definitely.
you're a payer because you take an
I'm operational.
operational.
Get return to service as soon as possible.
Yeah, you're a little bit more moral about the whole thing.
Well, ethically speaking, you should obviously never pay the ransom. You don't know where that money's going. You don't know what it's funding. It could be funding anything. That being said, especially for large organizations, if you're losing 3, 4, 5 million every day you're down, and it's only going to cost you $100,000 to get back up and running, business sense, that seems like a simple option.
Does it work though, Kev?
That's the thing that we find with large groups like the Sunnikiwi group, like other groups, they're typically very good at actually decrypting your stuff. Because the first time they don't, nobody's ever going to pay the ransom.
So I think, and my view on this is, choosing to pay the ransom is is also no guarantee. There's risk associated with that. So you might decide to pay the ransom based on your understanding that, they're a group that generally are pretty good and it's going to get decrypted and it's all going to be fine. But we're seeing examples now where they're either hanging on to data. We've also seen situations where, if all the holes aren't plugged, if all the vulnerabilities aren't patched, then they'll just reinfect you and the whole thing will happen again.
Exactly that. At the point of time of ransom, you're probably still dealing with actual recovery rather than identifying how they got in. So that's going to be a thread you're going to be following, but it could take like days or weeks to do that full root cause analysis. So you pay them, that hole might still be open. They might still be able to get in.
Yeah. We've also just seen some sort of, I suppose you might call it diversified approaches to, how ransomware groups get the end result they want, which is ultimately the money. And we've seen them now more recently kind of threatening to release that data publicly or to make it available, I guess, probably on the dark web or to other criminal groups or whatever. That's seeing pretty common.
Yeah, so speaking specifically for the Sunnikiwi group, they actually pushed out to all their affiliates and actually said to them, like, as part of that buying this ransomware, like, go and infect them, go and steal all that data, pull that data back. And what they actually did is they stood up their own internal forum on the dark web and said, like, publish it all here. And they stripped out some of the more sensitive data that we saw, like social security numbers, credit card numbers, and that formed a second reseller market.
Can we talk about the responsibility that organizations that hold people's personal information? I feel that we're reaching a point where they have a responsibility not just to meet the regulations, but they have a responsibility to let people know that their data's at risk. I don't actually think that it's good enough for Travelex to say, as far as we know, no data has been compromised. I don't think that's good enough. I think they should be coming at it from the more risk-averse perspective and saying there is a risk that your data's been compromised. So do things like change your passwords where you need to. And these are proactive methods you can follow.
It's going to be much easier if you assume compromise. Assume the worst case, plan for the best.
Don't you think that every security person worth their salt takes that approach?
I think so, yeah.
So basically what we're saying is that the bridges between, and we were talking to customers about this recently, the bridges between incident response and incident management. So let me guess, we would conject that at the incident response level, those security guys are thinking, we've probably been compromised and we need to do what we need to do to get this network working again. Whereas at the incident management level and then to comms, basically that organization doesn't want to put its hands up. So it kind of gets lost in translation then.
Absolutely. The actual responders, they're going to be looking for lateral movement. They're going to be identifying exactly what happened, what's gone out the door, what's been compromised. You've also got to factor in that human element. Like, if they were responsible for whatever breach or policy, they're not going to maybe want to stick their hand up and own that.
Yeah.
What is it Norsk Hydrate that did something really amazing in this space? Like, so they were affected not dissimilarly to Travelex, but
yeah, they're a great example of where being completely transparent about the fact that you're being attacked it played massively into their hands.
So in their response to the Travelex scenario, they'd be something like, "Hey, we've been hacked. We don't know what's happened. Likely that your data's been breached."
Yeah.
And that's going to build more confidence, isn't it?
Of course. If your response is, I mean, in this case, Norsk Hydro, they are critical national infrastructure, right? So they, that them being hacked has a greater potential risk to things not working properly, which is the reason for them being transparent. But in this case, in the case of Travelex, all Travelex had to say was, if you have ever logged into our website and you know the password that you used to log into it, and you use that password anywhere else, please change it on the basis that there is a possibility that that data has been compromised. That's not a difficult email to send. That's a very easy email to send. It's a very easy tweet to make.
It's more than that, though. It's warning people about your details are lost. So that's financial data. There could be transactions that are being done on your behalf. Like, we didn't know the scope of it at this time. So warning people, keep an eye on your finances, keep an eye on your accounts, look for anything suspicious. Even if you don't know that's the thing that's coming, you're dealing with finance, it's a possibility.
Thing that we also touched on earlier, and using Norsk Hydro as an example, they were completely transparent about it. It was a large scale and targeted attack, and from the outset they said, we don't pay the ransom. That's not what we do. We're backing ourselves and the experts that we've brought in to help fix this. And I want to talk about that with you in a second, Kev. But what's more interesting, I think, we talked about that whole publicly listed companies and how it affects them and everything. Their share price was completely unaffected. There was not even a dip in their share price because their comms were absolutely crystal clear. I wanted to talk about experts. What happens in this example when you need to call in someone? Like, who do they call in? Who are these guys that they call in? What are their specialisms? Why do they exist? Like, what's that gig?
You're typically going to have some kind of retainer. For large organizations, if you can't run large teams internally, if you don't have that kind of structure, you're going to have somebody on retainer. So you're going to go to companies like Deloitte, for example, and you'll have something in place with them where it says, like, if I have a major incident, I'm going to be able to pull this in. And you might not even have that in place. You might just go, actually, I'm going to go out to one of the big vendors, one of the big contractors and say, like, I need help now. This is what's happening. Be transparent with them, and then they can send people in.
And what do? They just put boots on the ground, basically, or do they have specialisms? Or
depending on what you're looking at, they're going to have specialists. They're going to have people who are well versed in what kind of attack you've got. If it's a ransomware attack, they'll have specialists for that. If it's recovering data you're interested in, then they'll have specialists for that. So it depends what element you're after. If you're after containment or recovery or post analytics, they'll have a team out there that they can call in.
Now, of course, the argument that will be made by compliance people and information security managers, they'll say, well, you just need to have an incident response plan. How hard can it be? You just got to spend that time, get that paper in that ring binder, get it on the shelf,
get it dusty,
let it sit there long enough so that everyone can forget what's in it, and then just enact that when the moment comes.
No plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Oh. I'd have gone Mike Tyson.
What's the Mike Tyson one?
I think no plan survives getting punched in the face.
Oh, everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth.
So no matter how strong your incident response plan is, you've got to have the right people who understand your networks. So in the case of Travelex, you're talking like this is on New Year's Eve. So are you going to have your A-team in? Or are you going to have a night shift?
Well, judging by what happened to them, let's say it's likely their A-team were not in that day.
A-team are drunk, I think.
A-team are drunk. The guy who wrote your incident response plan might not even work for the company anymore. So there's a lot more to it than just having a good plan. You need to test it. You need to make sure that across all levels of the business, they understand where it is, at what point their section kicks in.
It does also feel to me like the basics of an incident response plan can be tested. And I think the rest then just becomes variants of that testing. There are basic elements of that plan that should kick in the event of any incident.
Right, and by practicing that plan, it becomes muscle memory, doesn't it? I mean, anything that's hard to do, you should do it more often. That applies to anything in life.
Yeah, and of course, the other challenge is that whilst these attacks are happening all the time, that doesn't mean that every organization is facing a cyber attack every day. So if they're not facing one every day, then they have to kind of simulate one, right? Or simulate two, or however many it needs.
Is this my time?
Yeah. We were stood here
Waiting.
looking
This
at
is
you,
my
waiting
time.
for you
This
to
is
do
your
it.
time.
This is my time. I can do this.
Yeah.
I've
One more.
one more.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
It's really exciting that we should be talking about this because we are about to launch a new product into the market called Cyber Crisis Simulator. And it's designed exactly to do what you've just been talking about, which is to practice the scenarios, exercise them regularly, gather the data and understand the data, gather the data and understand what's going on in your organization. Is that enough of a pitch?
Yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive pitch, to be honest.
Thanks.
And I think what we're saying is incident response plans, however you choose to, whatever the method is that you choose to use to exercise them, they have to live. They have to be alive. They have to be front of mind for people who work in those roles.
It's not just your incident response plan either. So in this instance with Travelex, it's a major outage. So at this point, like disaster recovery, business continuity, those plans should also have kicked in parallel, like return to operations, get stuff back online.
Yeah, great. Good. Insightful stuff, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do subscribe, rate, and comment wherever you get your audio content. And if you want to know more about Immersive Labs, you can find us at immersivelabs.com or follow us on Twitter at Immersive Labs UK. Till next time, from all of us, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.